I have this approach that I call AIR. I created it. I've realized that I've been using it my whole life. It stands for authenticity, inspiration, and relatability. It's the three major breakdown points inside any business.
Welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where we talk with marketing agency leaders about the work behind the work, how teams scale, where processes break, and what it really takes to ship high-quality digital experiences. I'm Sean Johnston. My guest today is Jeanniey Walden, Chief Marketing Officer and founder of Liftoff Enterprises. Jeanniey has spent years inside of complex enterprise organizations working at the intersection of strategy, revenue operations, digital transformation, and execution. Jeanniey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for getting my name right.
To get us started, can you tell us a bit about your role and how digital execution fits into your broader marketing responsibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Liftoff is my company. I interestingly chose the title of CMO because a lot of what I am doing and a lot of my experience is based on marketing, and I thought it was really important to elevate that. What I didn't want as I went to market was I didn't want companies to think that I was the CEO and that they would get some B or C level team if they started working with us. I wanted them to understand that I'm the brains behind the strategy for many of our clients and our initiatives, and that's my passion.
Yeah, I had a similar mindset with the agency side of what we're doing that I've been doing for the last 14 years. I always sort of didn't want to call myself C anything, so I was always principal or lead strategist for the same reasons. Enterprise marketing teams are often great at strategy, but execution can be another story. So when an idea starts as a strategy or a campaign concept, how does it typically move from that stage into a live digital experience?
Wow, that's a loaded question. If you can get that right, it's kind of the holy grail of success from a marketing perspective. And it took me a really long time to appreciate and understand that operational excellence is a key to success. So, what I've seen work both on the client side and the agency side is you start with the strategy. And the most important thing to do is align on a very clear definition of strategically, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the KPIs and what does success look like to the people that matter? And then pull that down into the different work streams that are going to be creating the assets to execute that digital initiative so they can have the freedom to work in their own areas of expertise, whether it's in search or content creation. So they have the flexibility, but they also understand very clearly success looks like this, and
Yes.
that you continuously align on what progression of success looks like and do that magical thing that all marketing leaders and agencies and teams do, which is start a campaign and see what's working well and optimize that and see what's not working and quickly shift that over.
Yeah, I agree. Like, again, it's a little bit how my brain works, but operations and documentation and process have always been really, really important just to me personally. But in a couple of jobs before I went out on my own, and then how we grew the agency and eventually the product company, that operational excellence makes a huge difference. We've always found that when people don't have to worry about what they're doing or why they're doing it, and they know, as you said, what done looks like, what good looks like, then you can actually really get the most out of them. You tap into their best potential.
Exactly.
So, in your experience within these types of campaigns, like where do things tend to slow down the most in that journey?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many points, as you know very well, where things go wrong and can go wrong. I'm a big believer in what I call the plan double Z, which is when you're creating the strategy and you're future forecasting what it's going to look like, you've got, okay, well, if this happens, we've got plan B, and if this happens, it's C, and you go as many levels down as you possibly can, because especially in today's world, there's so many unknowns that can come in
Yeah.
and play a key role into what the results look like. So, from my perspective, when you create the strategy and you've got the insights and you've got the success points to it, you break it down into those elements. And that's the first breakage point point. Then you have to get into ensuring that the team's very clear on what the deliverables need to look like and how it relates to success. Then you start to go to market, and that's kind of the next breaking point because as things go, the creative images are the wrong size, or it seemed like a good idea in the brief, but when you see it in real life, the image doesn't compel. Or now you've got AI engines that are coming in and analyzing what you're saying instead of people. And so there's a whole nother approach to take. So I think breakage happens everywhere. And that's why you define success metrics and then you continuously have to manage the process. Some of the best things, even though it's probably the most painful and time intensive, but some of the best programs and initiatives I've worked on from the liftoff side with clients is the ones where there's a 2 times a week touch base until things are up and running. You start to see the results that you want, and then you can move to once a week or even a little less frequently.
Yeah, because you need to keep your finger on it. You got to be able to adjust and pivot and shift.
Yeah, and that's not micromanaging. I was working with a client that has another agency that they work with involved as well, and they suggested that the client was micromanaging, but really the client is overseeing the initiatives to make sure that the key results are there.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always tell the teams I work with, always have a plan D.
That's
So
right.
you always have to have those contingencies. You have to sort of predict as many ways it might be able to go so that everybody kind of knows like what to do and how to work with each other and how to make those adjustments, how to measure. Yeah, I really relate to that. So how much of the slowdowns come from tools and platforms versus organizational, structural, or approval processes?
Wow, that's a I don't know. That's like a half dozen of one, six of another kind of question. Traditionally, on the agency side of the house, I have seen more and more CFOs get involved, not just with budget allocation, but then budget management, which is unfortunate for a lot of clients that don't know that and they don't build that relationship up front because the CMO CFO relationship is probably the most important relationship in a business if you're trying to execute anything. And what tends to happen is a CFO approves a general spend, just keep it easy, $1 million for the year, but then wants to also reapprove each initiative and look at the ROI forecast. And that just makes it a very tedious and long process. That slows it down for sure. So that is a point of failure or a point of potential failure. But the second one comes along with the implementation of tools. If there's anybody out there listening to your podcast or watching the podcast that has found a way to make all tools seamlessly connect to each other, please call me because you will be
Magic
my
wand.
hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the rest of my life. And I want to talk to you. But as tools work, it's never as seamlessly integrated as it needs to be. It's not that difficult to do it in silos. But when data, especially insights that inform a different tool to be able to do what they need to do, work in, then that can become a point of almost paralyzation inside a
Mhm.
campaign if you don't have that right operational efficiency and success set up beforehand.
Actually, I find with all the promise of AI, that's sort of the biggest problem is you get these little siloed tools that do this amazing thing. But if you can't move that data around, then someone's manually doing it, or you just try to extrapolate, or like you said, you're just paralyzed and stuck in that one tool.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the other things that's come up a bunch that I've seen, and I mean, it's been happening for decades. It's where there's different definitions of data inside an entity. So when you're even asking for the insights and the data to start a campaign, or you're measuring success of a campaign, you ask three different people and you get three different answers. And that can make it challenging to move an initiative forward because it's almost like, and I've had to do this on the client side a few times, and I look to not have to do that on the agency side, but you have to say, here's our line in the sand. This is the data we're using. These are the metrics and the process we're using. And this is how we're going to evaluate success. Because if you leave it out to what's being defined inside businesses, then it can go sideways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's having that integrated awareness. I mean, that's the big leadership puzzle, isn't it? I'd love to talk more about the execution bottlenecks a bit more directly. So, what is the most common friction points you see when enterprise marketing teams are trying to ship digital work?
The biggest friction points that I've seen across the board, whether it's B2B or B2C, is setting up the tools, as you said, making the tools work for you in the way that the strategy has indicated that they should. And then The second is being able to manage the output of those different digital initiatives as they start going live to be able to optimize because they're giving you different signals. And I think it's a huge opportunity area that requires companies to work cross functionally. For example, I'm working with this one company and they're doing a digital initiative for acquisition, and it just wasn't giving the results that it needed. But that same digital initiative being used for retention or reactivation, like, blows it out of the water. If the team wasn't working cross functionally and sharing those insights, and there wasn't somebody there that said, wow, it's not working here, but maybe there's totally different digital use case here, then it would have just gone astray, gone to the side and be sunset, and that would have been a shame.
Well, exactly. So, do you have like some common solutions as far as getting systems to connect each other or moving that data around? Like, how do you guys overcome that limitation?
Yeah, my happiest experiences with that is to have a point person, whether it's someone on my team at Liftoff or whether it's somebody on the client side that architects and maps out all of the different technologies and understands where the potential integration points are. And that's their only job, because one of the biggest challenges I see inside companies on the client side is, yes, they have a person that does that, but they also have 7 other jobs as well. So they're partially
Yes.
working
Yes.
on it, but they're
Yeah.
also distracted. Makes it
Yeah.
really challenging. But, when it's someone's comprehensive role to run, I know you call it MarTech operations or operational efficiency or technical integration, then that's key. So that's my first recommendation is have one point person, whether it's inside the company or whether it's externally. My second recommendation is align that point person with the engineering and the product teams within a company. So if you're
Right.
B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. But what happens is you've got technology, the product and the engineering teams are also creating new products and new technology. And there needs to be that awareness and that buy in to make the workflows even more effective when it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The actual like operational point person, and my own experience as well, that is an absolute game changer. Having someone do that off the side of their desk, like they're just going to miss stuff. There's only so much of things you can put your attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are hard people to find, by the way.
Or-
But when you
Yeah.
find them, and at least for me, because I'm not that person. I love those people and I cherish those people, but for
Yeah.
me, I love looking for those people, and I do think that's where, technology can also assist. All of the advancements and enhancements I've seen just with different systems connecting to each other and being able to reference each other have moved things forward tremendously, but they do not replace that person's role at all.
Yeah, I actually pride myself in being a little bit of a unicorn collector as well. So those versatile people that can see the patterns and make the connections and aren't afraid to bring things forward. Those types of connectors they're hard to find. You hold them like a precious unicorn while they're there. So you mentioned engineering and internal production teams. So how much of those frictions at a technological level is caused by like content management system or software limitations or how those systems are actually implemented by people.
Well, I think the reality is most companies have created workarounds for limitations that they have. And while it is true that in many cases limits what they could be doing, it is what it is. And if you go back, gosh, 10, 15 years to when the technology systems that were implemented inside companies were, integrated into the on-site platforms, and in those days when you would put in servers that manage technical applications, it was like the Titanic. You could not make changes. So when we moved to a cloud-based system, it made it a lot easier, but the cloud-based systems still have limitations. And I did this initiative maybe 10 years ago with a company where I was the global CMO, and we worked with procurement, and we took a look at all the technology because there were so many companies that people use, and we tried to consolidate it down to here's your top 5 in each category that you can choose from. They're compliant, they're already pre-approved. We've already done the MSA analysis. And every single time we found use cases where, well, they're almost great, but that's why we need this one. Well, that one doesn't work for this case, so we need to bring this one in. So I don't think you can ever find the holy grail of one solution, at least not yet. But people try and find the workaround limitations, and hopefully with all the advancements in AI, then there'll be new innovation and development in those areas.
Actually, I think one of one of the primary opportunities around AI is the fact that it is advanced automations. It's not thinking or creating, but it can be taught to move things back and forth. And it seems that most of the energy is going into generation, creating of things. So a lot of our experimentation on our side of R&D has been actually the automation portion of it, moving that stuff back and forth. And like you said, I think there's an opportunity there because there's all of these systems. So, like, how often do dev queues or IT dependencies affect go-to-market timelines in practice?
Well, not that often if you are well planned and strategic. There's no reason why you should not have a clear identification of what's in the product roadmaps, what, is coming for installations and updates to be able to manage around that. And any business that you work with, you find those times where the product and engineering teams need to turn something around in a lot shorter window than they had planned or think they have planned. Again, it comes down to relationships and almost a sense of trust between the internal stakeholders to avoid those. So I haven't tended to run into those in a very long time. I think you run into those once with a big campaign and you learn how to make sure it doesn't happen again.
That's right. This the plain double Z, right?
That's right.
All right. So just to zoom out, when you look across organizations, do you see recurring moments where teams consistently get stuck?
100%. Yeah. From a technology standpoint, I mean, overall, yeah, I have this approach that I call AIR. I created it. I've been using it. I've realized that I've been using it my whole life. It stands for authenticity, inspiration, and relatability. I realized that I've been living this way from a personal and business perspective my whole life. I didn't put a name around it until, a few years ago. But it's the three major breakdown points inside any business. And the first one is the lack of authenticity, which is more around the strategic part of it, where you're actually creating a campaign initiative that matches who you are as a brand and supports the technical capabilities that your company can deliver on to create an experience that is truly authentic, because so many prospects and customers, whether it's B2B or C, are very focused on what's my experience like. You try something once, and if it doesn't work, you're like, oh, I hate those guys. I hate that company. I hate that brand. So experiences are key in it. So that's the first failure point. The second failure point is around trust and inspiration. And a lot of people think trust is just with the external consumer, but it's internal as well. And that's what really dives into the operational and technical pieces. If you don't have trust between your engineering team, your product team, your marketing team, the operations team around it, and then you've got the customer support team, then you can't create those workflows from one end to the other without running into significant issues. And I've seen that break down so many times, especially at the end where marketing comes up with a great strategy. They check with engineering and product. The experience is good, but nobody informs the customer support, client relations, membership team,
Right.
whatever you want to call them. And then all of a sudden, something unexpected goes sideways, tech process doesn't work exactly correctly. Your Reddit is filled with a million questions and concerns, and the team's not ready to handle it. So I see that happening a lot. That's the second thing I see. And then the last one's around relatability. And that is just more to, does anybody even understand what you're talking about? And this is
Right.
where I see a lot of campaigns, especially the execution of them, go sideways from companies. And I've seen this so many times over, where product feature sets are great because they're built by the teams that have been living and breathing this product for 2, 4, 8, 10 years. But they forget that your user, this might be their very first time coming into touch or experiencing the product. So the way that the product features come out are almost too advanced. And then the marketing behind it isn't relatable to the person that's actually
Right.
using it. It's relatable, the person's been using it for a million years. And so that's the third place where I see things fail.
Yeah, exactly. The trust piece you had mentioned was key. We work very intentionally internally within our businesses to, I call it, preventing an us versus them mentality, right? Where there is no us and them, there's just only team. Engineers and marketers, we're designers, like we all want the same thing. We're just different cogs in that machine. That us versus them was very common. I worked in a lot of organizations in my youth where there were just sandboxes and people fought over them, and that was just the culture. But you spend so much time arguing with each other, you can't actually do any good work.
Yeah. Well, one of the best things I've seen, I was on the client side, and the CEO, it was an early stage company. It was just a B round company, did an entire company update and had this for lack of better term, supply chain built. And it listed every department or team in the company. And it started with here's what we're ultimately trying to get to with the client. If this breaks, this causes this failure. If this breaks, this causes this failure. And it showed how every department and every effort was just as important as the other effort. So it
Yeah.
wasn't the sales
Yeah.
team that was bringing in the deals, and it wasn't the marketing team that was driving the buzz. It was every single piece of it. And that's always stuck with me. And I think that's super powerful because a lot of companies don't recognize it. But then you look to today where everyone is optimizing their business, leveraging AI and thinking it to how do we create ourselves in the AI first company? And a big news flash, AI first companies don't have all those silos. Like you can't build AI in a siloed operation anymore. You can enhance performance, but you can't build an AI first company that way. So I'm excited to see what the future has to offer about that. But you're right. It all comes down to trust. It all comes down to trust.
Yeah, and you can't work without it. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Was there a moment in your career when you realized that execution speed had actually become a strategic risk, not just an operational annoyance?
Gosh, yeah. So I'll give you a crazy story that's not technical at all. I was very early on in my career, and I had a job working for the CEO of a division of a company. And this was so long ago. It was before email. There were 8 different regional offices that the CEO oversaw. And every month he would write letters, handwritten, to 5 people in every one of the regional offices just to say, hey, I heard you did something great. And I just wanted to say thank you, appreciate your work. Like super nice, very compelling from a brand perspective, very compelling from a trust perspective and a performance perspective. Fast forward to I created the program and he got busy. So I was the one writing these letters, typing them up, and then he would sign them. I learned that I'm not a great typist. Today we have autocorrect. So this wouldn't have happened in today's world. But there were typos, small typos. I'd forget a period. I'd like mix 2 letters around because I was trying to move fast. And of course, that would delay it because he would read them and then he would not sign them and we'd have to go around again. And this is crazy. But the 2 offices whose letters were delayed started to see a production and performance decline because the people were waiting for the letters because they'd become so excited about them and they felt like this CEO did not like their office anymore. And I was super, super young, but it was a wake up call on the importance of efficiency to drive production. And as the world became more technologically advanced and you started to see emails come in and you could see how quickly you could resolve a complaint or a challenge or turn a client or a customer into a brand ambassador versus the non-digital ways, it really started to sink in and it stuck with me forever.
Yeah, it's funny how some of those early formative lessons really guide a career, isn't it?
Exactly. It is. It is. And those are the times that when you have people on your team that you're trying to counsel or mentor, or whether you have kids that you're trying to do everything for and be a helicopter parent, like it's you learn your best out of the mistakes that you make. And as
That's
my
right.
mom
Yeah,
said, make them early on. Like there's no mistake too large in most cases. There's nothing that can't be fixed or can't be managed. But if you don't make those mistakes, you won't learn.
you don't learn. Yeah. Yeah, with the ADHD side of things, particularly early in my career, I very similar experiences that you described. One of the mottos we've always had inside the agency side is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you're able to get smoothly through a process without a lot of mistakes and problems, then overall it's going to be faster than if you start rushing around and dealing with things ad hoc. That will always slow things down.
I think, I mean, it's true in life. My husband has a boat, and when you're trained to drive a boat, they say slow is pro.
That's right. So, as a leader, how do you empower marketing teams to move faster while still respecting enterprise constraints?
I really focus on building that trust early on and transparent communication. I'm a huge believer in just laying it all out there. Here's what we need to accomplish. Here's what success looks like. Here's the map on how we're going to get there. It's obviously going to change along the way. We're going to have to adapt to it. We're going to see what works. Continuous conversation. And as a leader, admitting when I don't know something and going back to find out, oh, hey, this was supposed to go live, but I'm hearing the engineering team says that they don't have enough resources for it. Or, we just heard from this technology company that we don't have the right plan to make this happen. And it's going to take 6 weeks for the migration. Really just leaning in and just being a part of have the solution with transparent communications. And that tends to inspire people and get them to get motivated.
Yeah, I found one of the hardest balancing acts is knowing when to hop in the trenches and help with everybody and move it along, and then when to get back out and let them carry it forward. I agree. I call them ivory tower executives, the ones that sort of sit up in their office and shout orders and get involved, but then run away again. So they can be really disruptive. So I agree. Moving into that challenge with the team, that builds, again, comes to trust. It builds a lot of trust. They get support, makes them feel safe as well. Like they've got an opportunity to be successful. You've got their back. But then knowing when you're now no longer helpful, that was a tough lesson for me to learn because sometimes I'd overstay. I'd overstay my welcome.
I call myself the terror. I'm the terror client when I'm working with agencies because at this point in my
Yeah,
career, I've been on the client side, I've been on the agency side. You know, I've started companies, sold companies, shut down companies. I've I
you've done it
started
all.
out typing congratulation notes to people that we would then overnight to them because technology didn't let us do anything more. So I've done it all, and I have very high expectations for the team that works with me, the companies, teams that I work with, and then also for the technology partners we work with. But it ends up being really great when you set that up ahead of time and say, I'm going to stay out of this. This is not my area of expertise.
Yeah, knowing when you're just not going to be helpful, that's the other thing too. Good intentions is not always the right motivations. What have you learned about driving meaningful change in complex organizations where not everyone reports to marketing?
Yeah, more and more that happens more frequently these days as different organizations have different titles and roles. And in B2B companies, a chief revenue officer might own marketing and sales. And, B2C companies, brand and communications might report to the HR person. It's so varied and different. Managing change in complex organizations, my rule of thumb is it's going to take 5 times longer than you think it will, and 3 times longer than you are 100% sure it will take. There is always going to be something along the way. And so you need to plan accordingly. Secondly, those interoperational or, cross functional relationships at the leadership or executive level are extremely key. Without them, you're misaligned, and then whatever you're doing in marketing will fall prey to general corporate politics. And you don't want that. You don't want people questioning the value of your initiative simply because they want to be seen by their CEO as doing a great job by looking out for the company and questioning something that they don't know anything about. And then the third is cross-functional communications. I've not yet found a company where they have found a way to do this. Again, this is one of those unicorn opportunities, but communicating what your team is doing to the rest of the company is oftentimes the biggest gift that you can give anybody. Adding context to any conversation is huge because oftentimes marketing has an initiative and they're set to do this goal. But what finally comes over to the product person is, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But they don't understand why. They don't understand the impact. Just a few months ago, I was working on an initiative where the answer from the product team was this until we gave them the context. And then they thought of a completely new and so much better way to accomplish what we were trying to do. And they're like, thank you for the context. Now we know how to do it. And by the way, this is going to make it 7 times better. And those are great times inside complex organizations, but challenging to do for sure.
Yeah, I really relate to that, particularly since launching the product. We have really tried to keep everybody aware of go-to-market strategies, sales processes, what we're hearing from customers. So like that example of the engineer, like I'll bring a need. They ask this question that seems like something that should be doable, and presenting the use case rather than saying, here's a solution, please implement it. And then the engineer is like, well, we could do this, or like they really only need that. And like, what about this? And then what we put together was something actually quite simple. We were able to roll out and really made a bunch of people happy. I agree that it takes extra effort, but it's well worth the intention.
Totally inspirational for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too is like when the people in the back rooms are able to see the traction at the front lines, makes them feel like a part of something larger, like their efforts are turning into tangible results out in the real world. I think that's really important for everybody to feel like their work is impactful.
I think that's a huge point. You'll see everybody works really hard to get something up and running. Marketing sees the results and,
Yeah,
executives see the results, but nobody shares it back with, oh my gosh, those, that 6 month project that you guys consolidated into 10 weeks. Guess what? We got it live and here's what we saw. Teams love that. They love
they
finding
do.
out the impact of the work.
Yeah, I think 100% correct. What's the emotional reality for marketing leaders that are caught between vision and execution?
I think the emotional reality is stress. It's not apparent. There's times in all of our lives where we know we're not doing a good job at something, where we feel like, okay, I could do better, or this isn't working out the way I want. And even if you don't say it externally, internally, So there's that part of it. And I think, marketing leaders are no different. When they feel that tension, then it is a very stressful situation because they've got to deliver and they've got to perform. And hopefully that stress turns into determination. I had a guest on our TV show once, music group, and they said they turned it into what they call notivation, which is motivation when someone tells you no or you run into a roadblock. We kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, sometimes no is an answer, and that's okay. All right, so when enterprise teams do manage to move faster, what usually makes the difference? What trends do you sort of see there?
The trends aren't really different than what we've been talking about. Transparent success factors shared with everybody across the board from the beginning, and expectations. Not just we want to generate $6 billion in sales from this, or we want to increase the stock price by 5%. But if this goes well, this is what it means for your team. In your team, if success happens, it means that you did this. And in some teams, it's not a financial number necessarily. It just might mean more efficiency. I see that as a huge recurring theme. The second theme is the continued transparent communication. Here's where the project is. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what's happening. Oh, we had to move this. Oh, we shift this. And then the last piece is kind of that postmortem. Here's the results that we saw. Here's what we're looking to do next. And what are your thoughts on that? If you do this, it's going to create a higher level of trust. So when we get our contracts in from these large enterprise clients, they'll have fewer red lines. If they have fewer red lines, we can handle a lot more in-house. I don't need to keep going externally to bring in more support. If I don't need to do that, then it's going to actually save us some money. And my day is less stressful, and we can start to turn this into an ongoing theme. When a company has a large initiative, to take the time to sit down and walk through, here's what we want to do. Here's what we expect the results to be. How's it going to feel successful for you? It is truly eye-opening because you also start to recognize, wow, now I've got to build this brand trust, not just through Net Promoter Score. It also has to come through the reduction in red lines.
Yeah, it's really neat perspective. I'm going to ponder on that one for a bit.
It's something I think everybody should do.
Yeah. Well, let's turn our attention to the future. We've talked about it a few times. When you imagine a modern, scalable digital workflow inside of an enterprise organization, like all of the problems solved, what does that look like for you? What do you
Wow.
envision?
In my perfect world, it is a unified uh, customer profile that can be activated on in a personal way. I have been searching for that and trying to build it my entire career, and I feel like we're getting closer to it. It's pretty fascinating the successes that you can have when you look at things in that methodology. Now, in today's world, a lot of that insight is much easier, and you can do strategic partnerships with companies that have data profiles on your clients that you might be missing. And in fact, one of my clients right now is doing that with a partner they have. They're finding out where their customers that have gone inactive are shopping that they might be able to come back to their business, and it's working. It's a very exciting program.
Yeah, again, I think we've touched on it before. Is this idea of being able to move along and connect data points to create a more richer profile of who you're talking to, what motivates them, what they're looking for. Yeah, that's a big change maker. So that's a wrap for this episode of Beyond the Build. A huge thank you to Jeanniey Walden for sharing such thoughtful insights into what it really takes to move from strategy to execution inside complex organizations. If you're a marketing leader or digital operator and today's conversation resonated, stay tuned. There's a lot more coming this season. Jeanniey, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be on with you and to have this very important conversation because especially this year, it's everything we need to focus on.
I agree. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.